There is a dish Jewish immigrants ate in the 1920s in East London that nobody talks about anymore. It was not bagels, it was not salt beef, it was not anything you would find in a deli today, but it kept entire families alive. When Jewish immigrants packed into the tenements of Whitechapel and Spitalfields, they came with almost nothing. No English, no savings, just the memory of pogroms and the weight of hope. They had to eat, so they cooked survival food, shaped by poverty and kosher law, made from scraps other people threw away. Most of these dishes have vanished. Today we are bringing back 31. Schmaltz spread on bread. If you understand one thing about Jewish immigrant cooking in the East End, understand schmaltz. Rendered chicken fat. You saved every scrap of skin from the Shabbos chicken, every trimming the butcher set aside. You cooked those scraps low and slow until the fat melted out and the skin turned into crispy, golden bits called griebens. You strained the fat into a jar, and that jar was everything. Your butter, your cooking oil, your flavor. You spread it on dark rye bread with a pinch of salt. And that was a meal, breakfast for a tailor heading to Hanbury Street at 5 in the morning. This was the foundation of every kitchen in the East End, because olive oil was expensive, because butter could not touch meat under kosher law, because chicken fat was free if you saved it. Those griebens, children fought over them like sweets. This was survival made golden. 2. Chicken soup stretched with water. They called it Jewish penicillin. Every Friday before sundown, if a family could afford a chicken, the mother made soup, rich with carrots, onion, dill, but that chicken had to last. Friday's soup became Saturday's lunch, Sunday's supper. By Monday, you added water. By Wednesday, it was thin as tea, but still carried the ghost of that chicken. It still tasted like Shabbos. Children drank it warm from cups. This was making one bird feed a family for a week. 3. Day-old challah soaked in tea. Friday's challah was sacred, braided, golden, blessed. By Monday, it was hard as stone. You tore it into chunks, dropped it in hot sweet tea, ate it with a spoon. The bread softened and the sweetness soaked in, and it filled you up. This was breakfast in the tenements off Brick Lane. Not delicious, but warm, cheap, enough. 4. Herring in every form, salted, pickled, smoked, schmaltzed. Herring was the protein of the poor. You bought it from barrels on Wentworth Street for almost nothing. A single herring flavored an entire meal. Laid on bread, chopped with onion and egg, it lasted weeks in brine. Workers from the garment factories on Commercial Street bought a piece wrapped in newspaper on the walk home. Salty, sharp, sustaining. This taste connected Whitechapel to the old country. 5. Potato latkes fried in schmaltz. Potatoes were cheap. Schmaltz was free. You grated potatoes, mixed an onion and an egg, and fried them in chicken fat until crispy and golden. Children loved them because eating something fried felt like celebration. Mothers made these on Chanukah, but also on ordinary Tuesday nights when nothing else remained. This was joy from almost nothing. 6. Borscht from a single beetroot. One beetroot, one onion, water, salt. You simmered it until the water turned deep crimson. Some added vinegar. Some added a potato. In summer, you served it cold. In winter, hot. That rich red color made the cheapest meal look beautiful. This soup followed Jews from the shtetls of Poland to Whitechapel Road. 7. Kasha with nothing. Plain buckwheat groats boiled in salted water. No butter, no gravy. End of the week. Payday days away. Heavy, earthy, bland, but filling. A bowl carried a man through 12 hours pressing coats in a Spitalfields workshop. Nobody complained because everybody ate it. 8. Pickled cucumbers from the barrel. Outside every deli on Whitechapel Road, wooden barrels of cucumbers sat in brine with garlic and dill, a halfpenny each. The crunch, the sourness, the salt. Children bought them after school. Workers ate them with bread at lunch. This was preservation as survival, making summer last through London's long gray winters. 9. Coolant left at the baker's oven, the one dish that was completely, uniquely Jewish. Torah law prohibits cooking on Shabbos, so families prepared a stew Friday afternoon: potatoes, barley, beans, and a small piece of meat if they could manage. They sealed the pot, carried it to the bakery, and left it in the cooling oven overnight. On Saturday after synagogue, they collected it, hot, thick, falling apart, and tender. Dozens of pots in the same oven, each marked with a name scratched into the lid. This was faith, expressed through food. 10. Gefilte fish from scraps. Fresh fish was expensive, so families bought heads and frames, whatever the fishmonger would part with for pennies. They minced the flesh with onion, bound it with matzah meal and egg, shaped it into balls, and poached them in bone broth. The fish were served cold on Shabbos Eve with train, that fiery beetroot horseradish. This was alchemy, turning what nobody wanted into the dish every family waited for all week. But resourcefulness went deeper than the Shabbos table. The next 10 dishes prove it. 11. Lakshan kugel from stale noodles. Egg noodles cooked earlier in the week, gone cold and clumpy. You beat an egg, maybe two, mixed in the leftover noodles, added a scrape of sugar, and baked it until the top turned golden and crispy. Sweet, dense, the closest thing to cake a poor family would see all week. This was transformation, yesterday's leftovers becoming Shabbos dessert. 12. Stuffed cabbage with almost no meat. Cabbage was cheap. Meat was precious, so you took a tiny portion of minced beef, stretched it with soaked bread and onion, wrapped it in blanched cabbage leaves, and simmered it in a sweet and sour tomato sauce. Each person got one roll. The sauce did the heavy lifting. The meat was a whisper, a suggestion, but it was enough. 13. Black rye bread from the Jewish bakeries. Dense, dark, sour. A loaf that weighed like a stone and lasted the entire week. You ate it with everything, with schmaltz, with herring, with nothing at all. The bakeries on Brick Lane and Wentworth Street turned these out by the hundred. The smell of baking rye drifting through the streets at 4 in the morning was the heartbeat of the neighborhood. 14. Chopped liver on a Thursday. Chicken livers were cheap because nobody else wanted them. You fried them in schmaltz with onions until everything was soft and golden, chopped together with a hard-boiled egg into a rough paste. Spread on bread, it was Thursday supper, rich, savory, iron-heavy. This was offal elevated to something people actually craved. 15. Hot chickpeas from Petticoat Lane. Sunday morning, the great Jewish market stretched down Wentworth Street. Vendors sold everything from secondhand coats to smoked salmon. One of them sold chickpeas, warm, tossed in salt, and served in a twist of paper. A penny a portion. You'd walk through the crowds, eating them with your fingers. And the noise, the Yiddish, and the shouting all blurred together into something that felt like belonging. This was street food. This was community built on chickpeas and paper cones. 16. Plain boiled potatoes with salt. End of the month. Nothing in the cupboard but potatoes. You peeled them, boiled them, drained them, sprinkled salt. That was dinner for an entire family. A mother in Stepney would serve this on a Thursday night, 3 days before wages came, and watch her children eat. Her heart would break quietly because this was not what she had imagined when she left Vilna. Her children were fed. They were alive. This was resilience measured in boiled potatoes. 17. Cabbage stewed with onion and vinegar. The East End wasn't only Jewish. Irish families lived next door. English families lived down the block. Food crossed borders. Cabbage was cheap, available year-round. Jewish mothers sliced it thin, cooked it with onion and garlic, added a splash of vinegar the way the neighbors did. Tangy, soft, filling. This was adaptation, learning from the people around you. Kitchen to kitchen, stairwell to stairwell. 18. Onion soup thickened with bread. 3 onions, stale bread, water. You sliced the onions thin and cooked them until sweet and caramelized. You added water and salt and let it simmer. Then you tore up stale bread and dropped it in. The bread soaked up the sweetness and thickened the broth, and suddenly you had soup, March in Whitechapel, the money gone, and a woman could turn 3 sprouting onions into something warm. 19. Soup from marrow bones. The kosher butcher gave away bones. Beef bones, barely any meat on them. You covered them in water and simmered them all day. Slowly the water turned into broth, thin, not rich, but something. You added a potato, an onion, and a handful of barley. The flavor came from time, not money. Hours of patient simmering. This was love expressed through waiting. A woman would start the pot before dawn and tend it all day. By evening, there was soup. 20. Bread spread with rendered dripping. When schmaltz ran out, people used whatever fat remained, often beef dripping from the butcher, rendered and saved in a jar, spread on bread with salt. That was a meal. Children came home starving, and their mother would slice the bread, spread it with dripping, and hand it over. Nobody thought it was strange because the whole neighborhood ate like this. 21. Cold kugel, sliced and pan-fried. Monday's kugel, cold and stiff in the pan. You sliced it thick, heated schmaltz, and fried the slices until the edges went crispy and golden. Suddenly, it was not leftovers. It was something new. Children ate this happily when they had refused the same kugel the night before. This was kitchen magic, passed through generations of women who learned that presentation mattered, that even leftovers could feel special if you treated them right. 22. Carrot zimmies without meat. Carrots, a handful of prunes, a spoon of honey and water. They simmered until the carrots broke down into something sweet, almost like dessert. The real version had brisket, but this one had none. It was just sweetness from the cheapest root vegetable in the market. On the nights it appeared, children's eyes would light up. Anything sweet felt like a gift. 23. Rice boiled plain with oil. Rice was sometimes cheaper than potatoes. It was boiled in salted water, then drizzled with a little oil. That was dinner, bland and filling and better than nothing. A mother serving this would promise herself next week would be different, knowing it probably wouldn't be. Because that's how it was, good weeks and hard weeks. You survived them both. 24. Stale bread pudding with a scrape of jam. Hard bread soaked in water, sweetened with whatever was available. A tiny bit of jam, a sprinkle of sugar, an egg to bind it, baked until it set. Children loved it because it was warm and sweet, and it felt like something special, even though it was made from scraps their mother had saved all week. This was morale disguised as comfort. 25. Tea with sugar and nothing else. Sometimes this was dinner, a cup of hot sweet tea. That was all there was. The sugar gave you energy. The warmth made you feel like you'd eaten. Workers drank it standing in workshops on Hanbury Street. Children drank it before bed when the cupboard was empty. Nobody admitted that sometimes tea was the entire meal. 26. A single egg beaten into hot water. 1 egg, boiling water. You cracked the egg into a cup, poured hot water over it, and stirred, maybe added salt, maybe bread on the side. And that was soup, the tenement version of egg drop soup, warm with protein, enough to keep your children alive until morning. 27. Matzah soaked in schmaltz. After Passover, leftover matzah sat in the cupboard for weeks, hard, dry, flavorless. You broke it into pieces, warmed it in a pan with schmaltz, maybe fried it with an egg if you had one. Matzah bray, they called it. The poorest version had no egg, just matzah and fat and salt, and it tasted like Pesach, like the one week that had its own sacred foods, even when you were eating the remnants weeks later. 28. Dried fruit, compote. A handful of prunes, a few dried apples from a market stall. They were simmered in water with a little sugar until the liquid turned sweet and dark, served in cups. Children drank it like juice. In winter, when fresh fruit was a luxury, this was the closest thing to vitamins they would get. This was health disguised as a treat. 29. apple peel simmered into sweet water. And this is the dish that breaks my heart. You ate an apple, the one piece of fruit your family had all week, and you saved the peel because even the peel had value. You put it in a pot with water and a pinch of sugar. You simmered it until the water turned faintly sweet and faintly fragrant. And you gave that water to your children. They drank it and they smiled because it was sweet, because their mother made it for them. A woman would stand at that stove in a flat off Commercial Road, watching those peels simmer. She thought about the village she had left in Poland or Lithuania. She thought about the children still waiting there. She would pour that sweet water into cups and watch her children drink it like it was the most precious thing in the world. And maybe it was, not because of the flavor, because of what it meant, that even with nothing, she found a way. 30. Plain boiled barley eaten with salt. The simplest dish. Barley, water, salt. The grain that sustained Jewish families across 1,000 years of wandering. You boiled it soft, ate it warm. It sat in your stomach like a quiet promise. 30 dishes, 30 stories, 30 ways Jewish immigrants survived in East London in the 1920s. These weren't the foods you see in delis today. They weren't romantic. They weren't beautiful. They were real. They were honest. They were proof that survival requires creativity, resilience, and l'ani. The people who made these dishes weren't just feeding families, they were building communities. They worked impossible hours in garment workshops. They sent money home. They raised children in cramped tenements. They prayed in makeshift shuls, all while eating schmaltz on bread, boiled potatoes, and soup made from bones. This is the real immigrant story, the one where people made something from nothing, where scraps became meals and meals became memories. So the next time you see someone eating something plain, something humble, remember, food isn't always about flavor. Sometimes it's about survival. Sometimes it's about love. Sometimes it's about holding on to dignity when everything else has been stripped away. What dish from this list hit you the hardest? Share your story. These memories deserve to be kept alive.